This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Max and Mia podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Mia. We're so happy you're here with us today. Thank you for choosing to spend your time learning English with us.
Absolutely. We really appreciate all of you who listen to our podcast every week. Your support means the world to us.
Today's episode is going to be a bit different and super exciting. We're going to help you discover something really important about your English journey.
That's right. Today we're going to test your English level. I'll tell you 2 stories. One will be around A2 to B1 level, and the other will be B2 level.
But here's the thing. If you don't understand everything, that's completely okay. Don't worry about it at all. This is just a fun way to see where you are right now.
Exactly. Remember, learning a language is like climbing a mountain. Sometimes you need to stop and see how far you've come before you continue climbing higher.
And speaking of climbing higher, learning English really opens so many doors in life. It connects you with people from all over the world, gives you access to amazing books, movies, and opportunities you never imagined.
Plus, when you learn a new language, you're not just learning words and grammar. You're actually expanding your mind and changing the way you think about the world.
It's like getting a new way to see the world more clearly. Every day you study, every word you discover, every chat you share, it all adds up.
So whether you understand 50% or 90% of today's stories, celebrate that. You're doing something incredible by learning English.
Remember, fluency isn't about being flawless. It's about sharing your thoughts and forming bonds with others. And you're already doing that just by being here.
All right, are you ready to put your English to the test? Let's start with some helpful tips before we dive into our first story.
What should our listeners keep in mind?
First tip, don't try to understand every single word. Focus on getting the main idea of the story. Second, if you hear a word you don't know, don't stop. Keep listening and try to guess the meaning from context. And third, relax. This is practice, not a test.
And remember, you can always listen again if you need to.
Exactly. Now let's dive into our first story. Okay, everyone, here's my first story. This one is designed for A2 to B1 level. So if you're just starting your intermediate journey, this is perfect for you. Listen carefully and don't worry if you miss a word or two. Just focus on understanding the main idea. Here we go.
First story, The Man Who Walked Around the World.
In 1970, a man named Dave Kunst decided to do something that nobody had ever done before. He wanted to walk around the entire world, not drive, not fly, but walk. His friends thought he was crazy, but Dave didn't care. He had always been different from other people. Dave lived in a small town in Minnesota in the United States. He worked at a normal job, but he was bored with his life. Every day was the same. Wake up, go to work, come home, watch TV, and go to sleep. He felt like he was missing something important. One day, while he was reading a magazine, he saw an article about a man who had walked across his country. Dave thought, if he can walk across one country, why can't I walk around the world? The idea excited him so much that he couldn't sleep that night. Dave started planning his trip. He needed to save money, buy good walking shoes, and learn about different countries. He also needed someone to walk with him because walking alone would be too dangerous. Luckily, his brother John agreed to join him. The brothers began their journey on June 10, 1970. They started walking from their hometown and headed east. They carried backpacks with food, water, clothes, and sleeping bags. They also had a small cart that they pulled behind them. The first few weeks were the hardest. Their feet hurt every day and they were always tired. Sometimes it rained and they got completely wet. Other times the sun was so hot that they could barely walk. But they didn't give up. As they walked through different states, people started hearing about them. Newspapers wrote articles about the Walking Brothers. Some people thought they were heroes, while others thought they were just looking for attention. After walking for several months, they reached New York. From there, they took a ship to Europe. They walked through many European countries, including England, France, Germany, and Italy. In each country, they met interesting people who helped them and gave them food and places to sleep. The most difficult part of their journey was when they were walking through the mountains. The terrain was extremely challenging, and they had to be very careful with the rocky paths and steep climbs. Unfortunately, John got sick from the altitude and exhaustion. The doctor said he needed to rest and recover, so he decided to return home. Dave was sad to see his brother go, but he understood and was determined to finish his journey. Dave found a new walking partner and continued his adventure. He walked through India, Australia, and many other countries. In some places, the weather was terrible. In others, wild animals were dangerous. But Dave kept walking. After 4 years and 2 months, Dave finally returned to Minnesota. He had walked 14,450 miles and had visited 20 countries. He was the first person in history to walk around the world. When Dave came home, he was famous. He wrote a book about his adventure and gave many speeches. But the most important thing he learned was that if you really want to do something, you can do it. You just have to keep trying, even when things get difficult. Dave's story shows us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. He wasn't a superhero or a professional athlete. He was just a regular person who had a big dream and the courage to follow it. Today, Dave is older, but he still believes that walking around the world was the best thing he ever did. He says it changed his life completely and made him a stronger, happier person. And that's the end of our first story. How did that feel? Could you follow along with most of it? Remember, this was an A2 to B1 level story. So if you understood the main points, you're doing great.
Wow, Max. That was such an inspiring story. Now let's talk about some of the important English elements that appeared in this story. What should our listeners pay attention to?
Great question, Mia. First, let's talk about the past tense, which was everywhere in this story. We used simple past tense for most actions. Dave decided. He walked. They started. This is the backbone of storytelling in English. When you tell stories about finished actions in the past, simple past is your best friend.
I noticed you also use some different past forms. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. We also used past continuous for actions that were happening when something else occurred. For example, while he was reading a magazine, he saw an article. The reading was in progress when he saw the article. This combination of past continuous and simple past is super common in storytelling.
What about those comparing words you used?
Ah, yes, comparatives and superlatives. We said, the first few weeks were the hardest. That's a superlative. We also used stronger, happier person. Those are comparatives. At A2B1 level, being comfortable with these forms really helps you express yourself better.
I heard a lot of could and couldn't in the story. Why is that important?
Great observation. Modal verbs like could, couldn't, would, and can are essential for expressing ability, possibility, and hypothetical situations. He couldn't sleep shows lack of ability. You can do it shows possibility. These little words add so much meaning to our sentences.
What about connecting words? I noticed you used many of them.
That's right. Connectors are crucial for fluent speech. We used but for contrast, because for reasons, while for simultaneous actions, and after for sequence. These words help your ideas flow naturally instead of sounding choppy. Practice using them in your own stories.
Any final grammar tips from this story?
One more thing, conditionals. We used if you really want to do something, you can do it. This first conditional structure is perfect for A2 to B1 learners. It's simple but powerful for expressing possibilities and giving advice.
So our listeners should focus on past tenses, comparatives, modal verbs, connectors, and conditionals. These are the building blocks of intermediate English.
Exactly. And remember, everyone, don't try to learn everything at once. Pick one or two of these areas and practice them this week. Now, are you ready for our B2 level story?
All right, Max, I'm excited to hear this one. This is for our more advanced listeners, right?
That's right. This story is B2 level, so it's going to be more challenging. If you're comfortable with the first story, let's see how you handle this one. Don't get discouraged if it feels harder. That's exactly the point.
Second story, the scientist who wouldn't give up.
Had you heard of Marie Curie before she became famous? You would have thought she was just another struggling student in Paris. Little did anyone know that this determined Polish woman would revolutionize science and become the first person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields. Marie had been working tirelessly in her makeshift laboratory for years when she stumbled upon something extraordinary. While examining pitchblende, a uranium ore, she noticed it was far more radioactive than pure uranium should have been. This observation, trivial as it might have seemed to others, sparked her curiosity. There must be an unknown element in this ore, she hypothesized. Her husband Pierre, initially skeptical, soon became fascinated by her theory. Together they embarked on what would prove to be one of the most arduous scientific journeys ever undertaken. The couple had been processing tons of pitchblende for months, yet they had barely extracted a trace of the mysterious substance. The work was backbreaking. They would spend entire days stirring massive vats of boiling ore with iron rods, their hands becoming permanently stained and their health deteriorating from constant exposure to radiation. By the time they realized the full extent of the dangers they were facing, Marie had already made her groundbreaking discovery. She had isolated not 1, but 2 new elements, polonium and radium. However, convincing the scientific community proved nearly as challenging as the discovery itself. Critics argued that unless she could produce a pure sample of radium, her claims would remain unsubstantiated. Marie knew that were she to succeed, she would need to process literally tons more ore. The task seemed impossible, yet she persisted. Working with barely adequate funding and primitive equipment, Marie spent another 4 years refining her techniques. She would often work alone late into the night, mesmerized by the ethereal blue-green glow emanating from her radium samples. Had she known then what we know now about radiation's effects, she might have approached her work differently. In 1902, Marie finally succeeded in isolating 1/10 of a gram of pure radium chloride. The scientific world was astounded. Not only had she proven the existence of new elements, but she had also pioneered research into radioactivity, a term she herself had coined. The recognition that followed was both a blessing and a burden. Despite winning the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903, shared with Pierre and Henri Becquerel, Marie faced considerable gender discrimination. Many colleagues suggested that Pierre deserved the credit, implying that Marie had merely assisted him. Tragedy struck in 1906 when Pierre was killed in a street accident. Marie, devastated yet determined, continued their work. She became the first female professor at the University of Paris and, in 1911, won a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry. Marie's legacy extends far beyond her scientific achievements. She demonstrated that with enough determination and intellectual rigor, even the most seemingly impossible barriers can be overcome. Her story reminds us that groundbreaking discoveries often come from those who refuse to accept conventional wisdom. There you have it, our B2 level story about Marie Curie. How did that feel compared to the first one? Could you notice the difference in complexity?
Wow, Max, that was definitely more challenging. What makes this story B2 level?
Great question. The biggest difference is the sentence complexity. Let's start with something that confuses many learners: inversion structures. I said, "Little did anyone know," instead of "anyone didn't know much." This inversion with little creates emphasis and sounds more sophisticated. We also used "not only had she proven," which inverts the auxiliary verb for dramatic effect.
I noticed some weird conditional sentences too. Were those correct?
Absolutely. Those are advanced conditionals that B2 learners need to master. For example, when I said, "Had you heard of Marie Curie before she became famous?" you would have thought, this is a third conditional. But notice how it starts with had instead of if you had heard. This inversion makes it sound more formal and literary.
What about that sentence with were she to succeed?
Excellent catch. That's subjunctive mood. Were she to succeed instead of if she succeeded. Native speakers use this in formal writing, but it trips up learners because were doesn't match she. It's not a mistake. It's a special grammatical structure that expresses hypothetical situations.
The past tenses seemed more complicated too.
Exactly. We used past perfect continuous extensively. Had been working, had been processing. This shows actions that continued over time before another past action. Many B2 learners avoid this tense, but it's crucial for sophisticated narration. It shows the ongoing nature of Marie's work before her discoveries.
Some sentences felt really long and complex.
That's because of participle clauses and complex relative structures. Instead of saying, "Marie worked with funding," the funding was inadequate. We said, "Working with barely adequate funding, Marie spent 4 years." The participle working connects ideas smoothly and shows simultaneous actions. This is what makes B2 writing flow naturally.
Any other tricky grammar points?
Yes, mixed conditionals. Had she known then what we know now, she might have approached her work differently. This mixes past condition with present knowledge. Also, cleft sentences for emphasis. Instead of, "her determination was remarkable," we could say, It was her determination that was remarkable. These structures add sophistication but require careful practice.
So B2 is really about sentence variety and complexity?
Precisely. B2 learners need to move beyond simple and compound sentences. They need to master subordinate clauses, advanced tenses, formal inversions, and sophisticated connectors. It's not just about knowing more words, it's about using complex grammatical structures naturally and appropriately.
That's quite a jump from A2 to B1.
It really is. But don't worry if you didn't catch everything. B2 development takes time. Focus on recognizing these patterns first, then gradually incorporate them into your own speaking and writing.
So Max, what should our listeners take away from today's episode?
Well, first of all, congratulations to everyone who listened to both stories. Whether you understood 30% or 90%, you've just challenged yourself, and that's what learning is all about.
Absolutely. And remember, this wasn't about getting a perfect score.
Exactly. If the first story felt comfortable and you caught most of the details, you're solidly in the A2 to B1 range. If you understood the main ideas but missed some nuances, you're probably transitioning between levels, and that's perfectly normal.
What about the second story?
If you followed the Marie Curie story quite well and understood the complex sentence structures, congratulations. You're operating at B2 level. But if it felt overwhelming, don't worry. That just means you have exciting progress ahead of you.
I love that perspective. What's the most important thing to remember?
Language learning isn't linear. Some days you'll feel like you understand everything, other days you'll feel lost. That's completely normal. The key is consistency. Keep listening, keep practicing, keep challenging yourself with materials slightly above your current level.
And be patient with yourself, right?
Absolutely. Marie Curie didn't discover radium overnight. It took years of persistent work. Your English fluency is the same. Every conversation, every podcast episode, every mistake you make is building your skills.
Speaking of building skills, what should listeners do after this episode?
Great question. Pick 1 or 2 grammar points we discussed today and focus on them this week. If you're A2B1, practice using past tenses and connectors in your own stories. If you're B2, try incorporating some of those advanced structures into your writing.
Any final motivation?
Remember, you're not just learning English, you're expanding your world. Every new structure you master, every story you understand, every conversation you have is opening doors to new opportunities, new friendships, and new ways of thinking.
And hey, if Dave Kunst could walk around the entire world and Marie Curie could discover new elements with basic equipment, you can definitely master English.
That's the spirit. Thank you so much for joining us today. Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and most importantly, keep enjoying the journey.
Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and tell your friends about Max and Mia podcast. We'll be back next week with more stories, tips, and English adventures.
Until then, keep learning and keep growing. We believe in you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
See you next time.